Black woman denied access to private jet, turns out it's hers, and she fires the entire crew. Have you ever wondered how one moment of blatant injustice can unravel someone's deepest resilience, only to awaken the unstoppable force within them? Meet Ametria White, an accomplished entrepreneur, a visionary leader, and an unyielding spirit who refuses to be defined by anyone's prejudice. On a windy morning at Teterboro Airport, Ametria strides across the tarmac in elegant pumps, only to be halted by a stern flight crew that insists she doesn't belong on their private jet. What they don't know is that Ametria owns the very wings they guard. In moments, a tempest of drama, revenge, and ultimate redemption will break loose. Ametria White had grown up in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Southside Chicago. The neighborhood carried its hardships like scarred tattoos etched into the concrete. Gunshots ringing at odd hours of the night, police sirens wailing like tortured ghosts, and the daily grind of seeing her mother work 3 jobs. These were Ametria's everyday realities. But there was a spark in her that refused to be snuffed out by circumstance or environment. She remembered, in vivid detail, a day in 6th grade when a teacher asked her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Ametria's classmates giggled at her proud response, "A pilot, so I can fly anywhere I want." That simple childhood aspiration to pilot a plane was deeper than the skyward dream it implied. It was Ametria's code for freedom from poverty, from fear, and most of all, from the feeling that certain doors were forever locked to people like her. Standing at just 4 feet tall back then, with hair in tight braids and shoes 2 sizes too small because money was tight, Ametria held on to that dream with a tenacity that made her mother teary-eyed with pride. As the years rolled on, Ametria discovered she had a unique gift for problem-solving and an unrelenting drive to succeed. She soared through her academics and seized every opportunity for scholarships. Her mother's passing during Ametria's final year of high school nearly derailed her, but Ametria channeled her grief into an unbreakable determination. She would make her mother proud, no matter what it took. She made it to a top university on a full ride. There, she buried herself in business courses and extracurriculars, forging connections and building networks. Her hustle was legendary. She'd wake up at 4 in the morning to study, attend classes all day, then work at the campus library until midnight. By graduation, Ametria had offers from some of the biggest corporations in the country. She chose to start her own consulting firm, setting up an office in a small co-working space in Manhattan. Those early days of her career were an uphill battle. She was told everything from "you're too young" to "there's no market for this" to "you'll have trouble raising capital." But Ametria, ever persistent, navigated the labyrinth of venture capital pitch rooms, and eventually she scored her first major deal with a tech company looking to rebrand its entire image. From that success, Ametria's consulting firm rocketed into prominence. Over the following decade, she expanded her portfolio into real estate, fashion endorsements, and even philanthropic projects focusing on underprivileged youths, particularly young women of color. Yet, through all her triumphs, Ametria never forgot the little girl who once dreamed of piloting a plane. Over the years, she took private flight lessons, eventually earning her pilot's license. By the time she turned 30, she had more than enough money to buy her own aircraft. It was a Gulfstream G650, a luxury private jet that she'd had customized to her specifications: plush leather seats, advanced avionics, and a lounge area boasting both style and comfort. The plane was a symbol of how far she'd come, a testament to her mother's sacrifices and her own determination. But Ametria never flaunted her wealth or demanded to be treated like royalty. She believed respect was a two-way street. All she asked for was common courtesy. Yet, as she would soon learn, even that simple courtesy could be denied when prejudice rears its ugly head. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon that chilly morning as Ametria stepped out of her luxury SUV at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. She'd arrived early, wanting to supervise the final flight prep for an important trip to Los Angeles. Dressed in a tailored white pantsuit and simple black pumps, she cut an elegant silhouette against the dull greys of the private terminal. Her assistant, Mallory, a sharp, red-headed woman in her late 20s, hurried behind, juggling Ametria's laptop bag and a thick folder containing meeting agendas. Together, they approached the hangar where Ametria's Gulfstream G650 was parked. Its gleaming fuselage bore no flashy artwork or bold lettering, just a subtle silver stripe glinting along its side. Ametria believed in quiet sophistication over loud displays. She was scrolling through her phone, checking updates on a proposed real estate acquisition, when a voice sliced through the crisp air like a razor. "Excuse me, ma'am," a tall, broad-shouldered man in a pilot's uniform barked. "You're not allowed here without clearance. This area is restricted." Ametria looked up, slightly taken aback. She recognized the uniform. The man was part of the flight crew hired through a reputable management company she'd been working with. Their job was to ensure her plane was always in top shape, flight plans were filed, and everything ran smoothly. He was clearly new. Ametria hadn't seen him before. "I'm Ametria White," she said politely. "I have credentials. I'm here to board my plane." The pilot cocked his head, scanning Ametria from head to toe. He gave her a disbelieving once-over, lingering on her high heels as though they were a crime against aviation. "Right," he said with a sarcastic snort. "And I'm the King of England. Clearance, please." Mallory stepped in. "This is Miss White, the owner of I don't care who she is." He cut her off, raising his voice. "We have protocol here. We can't just let random people waltz into a private hangar." She needs to step back. A prickle of irritation climbed Ametria's spine, but she maintained her composure. She pulled out her identification, along with documents showing her as the registered owner of the Gulfstream. The pilot took them, barely looking, and shook his head. These could be fabricated. "I don't see the management company's direct sign-off. Why don't you wait in the lounge until the rightful passenger arrives?" Ametria's jaw clenched. She noticed two more members of the crew, both wearing uniforms of the same management company, standing a few paces behind, exchanging skeptical glances. She recognized a flicker of something cold and dismissive in their eyes. It was the same look she'd encountered countless times in high-end boutiques or exclusive restaurants, a silent question of, "What are you doing here?" Before Ametria could respond, the pilot turned to Mallory. "And you, are you her assistant or something? Because you can't just roll up without going through security." "I don't know how you even got onto this tarmac." Mallory looked like she wanted to bury this man in a pile of disclaimers and corporate contracts, but Ametria gently touched her arm to hold her back. This was a different type of confrontation, one Ametria had too much experience navigating. "Sir," Ametria said calmly, "if there's an issue, perhaps you can contact your supervisor with the management company. They know exactly who I am. I've flown this plane several times." "You mean the plane you say is yours?" he retorted, waving the documents. "We'll see about that." And with that, he turned on his heel and stalked off toward the flight lounge, Ametria's documents in hand. A chill wind whipped across the runway, but Ametria barely felt it. She glanced at Mallory, who gave her a worried look. The morning had only begun, and already Ametria sensed an uphill battle brewing. She quietly exhaled, bracing herself for the storm to come. Inside the small private terminal lounge, Ametria and Mallory were directed to a set of chrome and leather chairs adjacent to a glass wall overlooking the runway. The pilot, whose name tag read Captain Harris, had vanished into a back office. Ametria took the momentary reprieve to steady her nerves. Mallory leaned in, voice hushed. "White, we can contact the management company directly. This is ridiculous. You shouldn't have to deal with this sort of treatment." Ametria nodded, already typing a message on her phone. But before she could hit send, another figure entered the lounge, a woman in a crisp, navy blue suit with the company's insignia pinned to her lapel. Her sharp gaze flicked from Ametria to Mallory, then settled on Ametria with a cool, clinical scrutiny. "My name is Barbara Klein, Director of Operations," she announced. "Captain Harris has raised some concerns regarding unauthorized personnel attempting to board one of our managed aircraft. May I see some identification, please?" Ametria handed her ID over once more, along with the documents that had been returned moments before. Barbara examined them with excruciating thoroughness, her expression never softening. "This is unusual," Barbara finally said, pursing her lips. "Typically, owners arrange for an escort if they plan to come in outside of scheduled flight times." "I don't need an escort to my own plane," Ametria replied, restraint lacing her tone. "I've been flying out of this airport for 2 years now. You should have my details on file." Barbara's brows inched together. "Captain Harris said you became aggressive when approached." Ametria's eyes widened. "Aggressive? I simply stated who I was and showed my papers. I have no record of aggression or misconduct. In fact, I've been nothing but polite while being effectively blocked from my own aircraft." Barbara glanced at Mallory as if questioning Ametria's version of events. Mallory held her ground, crossing her arms in disapproval. Captain Harris raised his voice first, she stated firmly. He refused to look at Miss White's documents and accused her of trespassing. The Director of Operations tapped the documents against her palm, her face revealing little emotion. "Let's do this. I'll run these details through our system. If everything checks out, we'll proceed accordingly." She walked away with the documents, leaving Ametria and Mallory once again in that sterile lounge. Ametria's frustration was mounting, and she could feel the tension stiffening her neck. She'd hired this management company to handle logistics and maintenance for her plane, precisely so she wouldn't have to deal with airport bureaucracy. The monthly fees she paid them were substantial. Yet here she was, being grilled as if she were a criminal. As the minutes ticked by, Ametria's mind raced through scenarios. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they had new staff who weren't briefed. Still, Ametria couldn't ignore the subtext, the suspicion in their eyes, the subtle hostility in their voices. This wasn't just about protocol. Too many times in her life, she'd encountered the same brand of thinly veiled discrimination. After what felt like an eternity, Barbara returned, accompanied by Captain Harris. The pair wore tense expressions, and Ametria braced herself. "It appears your name is, indeed, associated with the ownership of this Gulfstream G650. Barbara began, her tone begrudgingly neutral. "However, we require further verification. There's a note in our system about a pending ownership transfer for this aircraft. We need to confirm which stage the transfer is in." Ametria frowned. "Pending transfer? I'm not selling my plane, nor am I in the process of transferring ownership." Barbara cleared her throat. "That's curious because the system indicates a possible transition. It's flagged as incomplete, which means we don't yet have confirmation of the rightful owner." "That must be an administrative error," Ametria stated, holding back her growing ire. "I signed a long-term contract with this management company. The plane is registered to my holding corporation, White Horizons LLC. There should be no confusion," Captain Harris interjected, crossing his arms. "Until that confusion is cleared up, I'm afraid I can't let you or your assistant near the aircraft." It was a surreal moment, like stepping into a Kafkaesque dimension where the simplest facts facts were contorted into obstructions. Amitria's phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at the screen. It was her legal advisor, Vanessa Howard. Amitria raised a finger in a silent request for a moment, answering the call. "Vanessa," Amitria said softly, "I'm at Teterboro, and there's a serious problem. Could you verify with the management company that I'm still the legal owner of the G650? Mallory whispered. "We're going to handle this, Miss White. Don't worry." As Amitria stepped away to delve into a more private conversation with Vanessa, she felt the unwavering stares of Barbara and Captain Harris. Somewhere in the pit of her stomach, she sensed that today's obstacles would be more than just red tape. The storm clouds of conflict were gathering, and Amitria was determined not to back down. While Amitria waited for Vanessa to confer with the management company's legal team, her thoughts drifted back to a time when she was fresh out of college. She remembered that sinking feeling of walking into corporate boardrooms, facing a sea of skeptical faces, all silently questioning how someone like her young, black female could possibly be the boss in the room. It was reminiscent of her earliest fundraising efforts for her consultancy. Once she had been outright told, "We usually don't fund businesses run by people with backgrounds like yours." The veiled language was painfully transparent, and Amitria had walked away from that meeting feeling a sting that cut deeper than any simple professional rejection. Yet she'd proven them wrong. Every success, every contract won, every victory was a testament that no one could place her in a box she refused to stay in. This morning, however, felt like a twisted replay of those humiliating incidents, just on a larger, more personal scale. Now, they were trying to keep her from something she rightfully owned. Mallory's voice jolted Amitria from her reverie. "Miss White, Vanessa's on speaker." Amitria nodded and put the phone on speaker mode. "Vanessa, any update?" Vanessa's voice came through, smooth but tinged with urgency. "I just spoke to the management company's legal department. They confirm your ownership is valid. However, there's an odd note in their system about an inactive transfer that hasn't been officially cancelled. It seems someone initiated a process months ago, then halted it. They claim it wasn't you or your representative, so it might be an internal clerical mistake." Amitria felt her pulse quicken. "So, are they clearing me for takeoff or not?" Vanessa sighed. "Barbara Klein's boss said they need a day or two to sort it out. But I reminded them that you have a legally binding contract and that immediate access to your aircraft is non-negotiable. They're supposed to contact Barbara any minute now with instructions to comply. Any minute isn't fast enough," Amitria muttered, glancing at her watch. She had a series of investor meetings lined up in Los Angeles. Delays could jeopardize potential deals worth millions. She needed to get airborne soon. Suddenly, Captain Harris re-entered the lounge with a triumphant glint in his eye. "I just got off the phone with someone from HQ," he announced. "They haven't confirmed Miss White's credentials yet. Until further notice, she's not allowed on the jet." "Are you serious?" Mallory hissed. "We're telling you, we have confirmation on our end." Amitria raised a hand to calm Mallory, then faced Captain Harris directly. "I'd like to speak with the HQ representative you talked to, please." He paused, seeming taken aback by her direct request. Then he forced an officious shrug. "They're in a meeting now. You'll have to wait." The tension in the room grew thick enough to cut with a knife. Amitria recognized the power play. She'd encountered it before, people asserting authority, counting on the inconvenience and humiliation to make her back down. But Amitria was done playing along. "This is unacceptable," she said, voice firm. "I'm calling your boss's boss if I have to. I will not be denied access to my property." Barbara Klein reappeared, phone in hand, looking flustered. "Miss White, I just received a call from the legal department. It seems they are clarifying the ownership matter. However, we must adhere to official guidelines until we receive the final confirmation. You're free to remain in the lounge," or you can leave the premises while we figure this out." Ametria stared at her. "This management company works for me. I pay for these services. That plane is under my corporation's name. Do you understand the meaning of that?" Barbara's gaze flickered, a momentary flash of uncertainty crossing her features. "We have to follow protocol." "I'm sorry." At that, Ametria locked eyes with Mallory. In silence, they both understood. This was a fight Ametria would see through to the end. Too often, people expected her to quietly retreat. Not this time. She was done letting others define her place in the world. "Then I'll wait," Ametria said, sinking into one of the lounge chairs and crossing her legs. "But rest assured, if this isn't resolved soon, there will be consequences for the entire crew." Captain Harris and Barbara exchanged uneasy glances. The storm was about to break, and they suspected too late that they had misjudged Ametria White. The tense silence in the lounge was broken only by the occasional crackle of the airport intercom and the low hum of small talk between other travelers. Mallory scrolled through her tablet, trying to distract herself with updates on Ametria's schedule. Ametria herself remained poised, despite the emotional turmoil roiling beneath the surface. After nearly an hour, the phone on the side table rang. Barbara snatched it up. Her conversation was brief, punctuated by abrupt nods and curt acknowledgements. When she hung up, her posture seemed to droop slightly, like a balloon losing air. "It appears," Barbara began, her voice tight, "that Miss White is indeed the legal owner of the Gulfstream G650 in question." She pressed her lips together, struggling to remain composed. "The transfer that was noted was an internal error. You are, of course, free to board your aircraft." A triumphant warmth flooded Ametria's chest, but she kept her expression controlled. She rose gracefully from her seat. "Thank you," she said calmly. "I will be boarding now." Captain Harris opened his mouth as if to protest, but Barbara shot him a warning glare. He swallowed whatever remark he was about to make. Ametria motioned for Mallory to gather their belongings. Together, they strode toward the exit, Barbara and Harris trailing behind them. Out on the tarmac, Ametria's jet gleamed under the mid-morning sun. Its engines were already warmed up, courtesy of the ground crew that had prepped it earlier. Ametria's heart swelled with a sense of pride and relief as she neared the Gulfstream steps. But just as she placed a hand on the gleaming railing, Captain Harris stepped in front of her. "I'll need to see your pilot's license if you plan to be in the cockpit," he insisted, struggling to regain some sense of authority. Ametria's eyes narrowed. "Pilot's license? I have one, but I also have a certified pilot I typically hire for flights." "Are you that pilot?" Harris cleared his throat. Yes, I was assigned to this flight. But after this confusion, perhaps you'd prefer a different pilot, or wait until we can reassign someone." Ametria took a step forward, refusing to let him intimidate her. "I have every right to see my plane. If you don't wish to pilot it, I can request a replacement immediately." Barbara interjected with a forced smile, her tone smoothing over. "Now that we know Miss White's credentials are valid, Captain Harris will be honored to pilot you. Isn't that right, Captain?" He gave a stiff nod, the resentment radiating off him like heat waves. Ametria's gaze swept from Barbara to Harris. She recalled the humiliations of the past few hours and the countless indignities that had gone unpunished in her life. Something inside her shifted a steely resolve that left no room for compromise. "I'll board," Ametria said. "Captain Harris can remain at the controls for now. But first, we have a matter of accountability to address." Barbara looked alarmed. "Accountability?" she echoed. "Yes, you see, I don't appreciate being treated like a trespasser at my own jet. I'm considering whether your company's services are even worth my investment if they employ people who make me feel like a criminal." Captain Harris opened his mouth, but no words came out. Barbara's eyes darted nervously. Ametria could see the swirling calculations behind them, the management company's reputation, the potential lawsuits, the lost contracts. if Ametria took her business elsewhere. Finally, Captain Harris spoke. "I was only following protocol," he mumbled. "Protocol is one thing," Ametria said, her voice low and icy. "Harassment is another. Keep that in mind before you speak to me or anyone else like this again." She turned and ascended the steps, stepping into the plush interior of her Gulfstream G650. A wave of relief and pride crashed over her. This was her space, her achievement, and no one could take that from her. Behind her, she heard Captain Harris and Barbara whispering heatedly. Mallory shot Ametria a look that said, "We won." But Ametria knew this was only the beginning. The day's events had already stirred a deep anger in her, one she intended to address with consequences that would echo far beyond this single flight. The Gulfstream's cabin exuded refinement and comfort. Soft leather seats in a cream hue lined the space, each equipped with a discreet pull-out table. Polished wood accents gleamed under overhead lighting, and large windows offered panoramic views of the airport sprawl. Mallory settled into one of the seats while Ametria made her way to the cockpit. She wanted to verify everything was in order. The cockpit itself was a marvel of modern aviation technology, touchscreen displays, and state-of-the-art avionics. Captain Harris was already strapped into the pilot's seat, flicking switches and running through the pre-flight checks with mechanical precision. Another co-pilot, a young woman named Sarah Montgomery, glanced over her shoulder as Ametria entered. "Miss White," Sarah greeted politely. Unlike Harris, her tone carried genuine respect. "We're completing the final checks. We should be ready for taxiing in about 5 minutes." Ametria nodded. "Thank you, Sarah. One, appreciate your professionalism." Sarah's cheeks tinged pink. Captain Harris kept his gaze locked on the instrument panel, lips pressed tight. Ametria let out a slow breath, reminding herself to maintain composure. She checked her watch. The entire ordeal had delayed them by nearly an hour and a half. Time was money in the world of business, and Ametria was determined to salvage the rest of the day. Before stepping out of the cockpit, Ametria placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "If you encounter any issues or need anything, let me know directly," she said softly. A subtle emphasis on the word directly left Captain Harris out of the loop. He stiffened but said nothing. Back in the cabin, Ametria sank into a seat next to Mallory, who handed her a tablet. "I've got the revised agenda," Mallory said. "Your first meeting in Los Angeles is with Helios Media at 2 p.m. local time. I've pushed it back to 3 p.m., but that's the latest they can do." "Fine," Ametria said, scanning through the notes. "Have we alerted them that we might cut it close?" Mallory nodded. "They understand and are willing to accommodate." Ametria leaned back against the headrest, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. She'd handled worse crises, but this felt more personal. It wasn't just about lost time, it was about dignity. For a moment, she closed her eyes and replayed the events of the morning, the condescension in Captain Harris's voice, the implied accusations. Rage coiled in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Now that she was on her jet, the priority was to handle her business. The matter of the crew's behavior would be dealt with later, systematically and thoroughly. A gentle jolt signaled that the plane was on the move. The ground crew guided them out of the hangar and toward the runway. Ametria glanced out the window. Teterboro's runways were busy with other private planes, some taxiing, others taking off. She caught a glimpse of Barbara Klein standing near the hangar doors, arms crossed, her face a study in worry and regret. Within minutes, the plane taxied into position. Ametria felt the roar of the engines build, vibrations coursing through the cabin. Her pulse quickened. As the jet sped down the runway, Ametria gripped the armrests, a mixture of excitement and lingering tension dancing across her nerves. Then, with a smooth upward tilt, they were airborne. A few minutes into the flight, the fasten seatbelt sign blinked off. Mallory got up to retrieve some water from the galley. Ametria's phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. "I hope everything is all right now. Let's talk next steps later." This could be grounds for a serious lawsuit if you want to pursue it. Amatria typed back, "Thanks, Vanessa. We'll talk once I'm on the ground in La." After tucking her phone away, Amatria gazed out the window at the cloud-swept sky. The morning's ordeal played over in her mind, but for the moment, she pushed it aside. The seat felt soft under her, the hum of the engines was soothing, and a thin ribbon of sunlight spilled across her legs. She was en route to a city where major deals awaited, and Amatria White never met a challenge. She couldn't turn into an opportunity. Still, as her eyes drifted shut, she made a silent vow. The disrespect she endured today would not go unanswered. Captain Harris, Barbara Klein, and any others who had treated her like an imposter on her own aircraft would soon learn what it meant to cross Amatria White. An hour into the flight, Amatria decided to head back to the cockpit. She wanted to check on the flight progress and, more importantly, gauge Captain Harris's attitude now that the truth was out. As she approached, she heard hushed voices. Harris and Sarah were deep in conversation. "I just don't understand why she's so stubborn," Harris muttered under the hum of the instruments. All she had to do was follow the standard procedures. Sarah's response was too soft to catch, but Amatria could imagine the chastisement in her tone. When Amatria finally stepped in, both pilots turned to look at her. Sarah's expression was neutral, while Captain Harris wore a scowl that he tried to hide behind a professional facade. "How are we looking?" Amatria asked, her voice steady. Sarah tapped a display. "Smooth skies ahead. No reported turbulence until we hit the California coastline. Flight time looks like about 5 hours total. We'll be a little behind schedule, but should still make it by early afternoon stayed." Amatria nodded, arms folded. She locked eyes with Captain Harris. "Any concerns?" He gave a terse shake of his head. "All systems are normal, Miss White." A heavy silence filled the cockpit, thick with unspoken tension. Amatria knew it was neither the time nor the place to engage in a confrontation mid-flight. She simply said, "Thank you. Let me know if you need anything." Then she turned and left. Back in the cabin, Mallory had set up a makeshift workstation. A laptop and multiple folders were spread across a small table. Amatria took a seat opposite her and began reviewing documents for the upcoming meeting with Helios Media. She highlighted key points, scrawled notes, and double-checked the financial projections she planned to present. Yet, despite her focus, she couldn't fully shake the feeling that something more insidious was at play with the management company. An internal error? A random glitch in the system? It seemed too coincidental, especially given the extent of the hostility she'd faced. Amatria's intuition whispered that there might be more to discover. As she read through another set of reports, Amatria's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We're sorry for your inconvenience. We assure you that the matter is being resolved internally." No name, no signature, just a vague reassurance. Amatria arched an eyebrow. It only fueled her suspicions that someone was scrambling to cover up a blunder, or worse, orchestrating a sabotage. She typed a quick response. "Please identify yourself. Also, I would like a complete audit of my aircraft's management records for the past 6 months." There was no immediate reply. Mallory paused her own work, looking up with concern. "Is everything okay?" "Not sure yet," Amatria replied, rubbing her temple. "Something about this entire situation isn't sitting right. Could you email the management company and request a full breakdown of every authorized user, flight log, and maintenance record for the GE650 over the last half year?" Mallory nodded, already typing. "Consider it done." Amatria inhaled deeply, forcing herself to concentrate on the immediate tasks at hand. She couldn't let paranoia derail her focus. Still, she made a mental note to contact a private investigator if necessary. She was Ametria White. After all, she never accepted half answers or sloppy excuses. Hours later, the coastline of California came into view, golden sunlight dancing off the ocean's surface. The plane began its descent toward Los Angeles, a city of big dreams and bigger stakes. Ametria's heart quickened. She needed her A game for the Helios media meeting, but once that was handled, she'd circle back and address the fiasco at Teterboro in a manner no one involved would soon forget. Touching down at Van Nuys Airport outside Los Angeles was usually a smooth affair, and this landing was no exception. The moment the wheels kissed the runway, Ametria felt a fleeting sense of relief. She was on schedule, barely, to make her critical meeting with Helios Media. Captain Harris taxied the Gulfstream G650 to a private parking area, where a black SUV was already waiting to whisk Ametria and Mallory away. As the engines powered down, Ametria stood in the aisle, gathering her belongings. Captain Harris appeared at the cabin door, removing his pilot's cap. "We've arrived safely, Miss White," he said, his tone carefully neutral. Ametria simply nodded. "Thank you." Then she stepped past him, Mallory following. Outside, a chauffeur opened the SUV's door. Ametria slid into the plush back seat, Mallory taking the front. The drive to the Helios Media headquarters in West Hollywood was a whirlwind of phone calls, last-minute strategizing, and Ametria's silent determination to put the morning's drama out of her mind, at least temporarily. The Helios Media building was an architectural marvel of glass and steel, reflecting the blazing California sun. Inside, Ametria and Mallory were greeted by polished receptionists who directed them to an executive conference room on the 32nd floor. Time seemed to accelerate, each second carrying Ametria closer to a pivotal business moment that demanded her full attention. Seated around a gleaming table were the Helios Media executives, including CEO Benjamin Royce, a sharp-eyed man in a tailored suit who greeted Ametria with a warm handshake. "White, we're thrilled you could make it," he said. "We've heard amazing things about your consulting work." Ametria flashed a confident smile. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Royce. Thank you for accommodating the schedule change." Over the next 2 hours, Ametria delivered a polished presentation. She outlined how her team could revolutionize Helios Media's brand strategy, integrating cutting-edge technology and streamlined content delivery. Slide after slide, Ametria demonstrated her deep understanding of the media landscape, illustrating how her approach would bolster Helios's market share and bottom line. By the time the Q&A session wrapped up, the room buzzed with energy. Executives exchanged nods, clearly impressed. Benjamin Royce leaned forward. "I have to say, Miss White, your vision is truly impressive. I'd like to move forward with a formal proposal immediately." Ametria exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I'm glad to hear that. We can have the initial contract drafted by the end of this week." Handshakes were exchanged, business cards traded. Mallory whispered an excited, "We nailed it!" into Ametria's ear as they stepped into the elevator, heading back to the lobby. Ametria allowed a moment of quiet pride to blossom. This was what she did best, turning challenges into opportunities, forging alliances, and advancing her brand of strategic innovation. Yet, as they reached the ground floor, Ametria's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a direct call from the CEO of the aircraft management company, a man named Lawrence Pierce. Ametria's pulse quickened as she answered, stepping aside while Mallory arranged their ride back to the airport. "Mr. Pierce," Ametria greeted, her voice measured. "I trust you have an explanation for this morning's fiasco." His voice crackled through the line, heavy with contrition. "Miss White, I'm calling to offer my deepest apologies. We've already begun an internal investigation. I want to assure you that neither I nor the company tolerate the kind of behavior Captain Harris exhibited. Also, the confusion regarding the plane's transfer status was indeed a clerical error. Ametria listened, her eyes drifting over the lobby's marble floor as Pierce continued. I've placed Captain Harris under review. In the meantime, I personally guarantee you'll have no more disruptions in using your aircraft. She let him finish before responding. Mr. Pierce, I appreciate the apology, but I'm not satisfied. I'll be conducting my own review of your company's practices. Let me be clear, if I don't like what I find, I'll be taking my business elsewhere. And I'll make sure my contacts in the industry know exactly why. Pierce's sigh was audible. Of course, Miss White, I understand. We'd hate to lose you as a client. Please let me know if there's anything we can do to rectify this. Ametria ended the call without further pleasantries. As she walked toward the building's exit, her high heels echoing on the marble, Ametria felt the familiar fire of determination blazing again. She'd secured a game-changing deal for her consultancy. Next, she would handle the management company and every disrespectful employee under its banner on her terms. The limo ride back to Van Nuys gave Ametria time to decompress and to plan. Mallory sat beside her, checking off a to-do list. All right, Miss White, she said, we have a dinner meeting tonight with the finance team in Beverly Hills and a radio interview tomorrow morning. I'm also lining up a call with the private investigator you requested. They said they could do a deep dive into the management company's recent records. Excellent, Ametria replied. Her reflection in the tinted window revealed a woman whose eyes blazed with purpose. She'd spent a lifetime standing up to doubters and naysayers. She wouldn't let a group of arrogant airline employees tarnish her name or her plane. Minutes later, they arrived at the airport. The Gulfstream G650 was being serviced on the tarmac, and Ametria noticed a maintenance crew scurrying around it with unusual speed. Captain Harris was nowhere in sight, replaced by a different pilot who greeted Ametria courteously. The tension from earlier still lingered in the air, but Ametria brushed it aside, focusing on her next move. Inside the cabin, Ametria sank into a seat, accepted a glass of water from the flight attendant, and dialed her friend and fellow entrepreneur, Nina Caldwell. Nina was not just a confidant, but also a strategic mind who could unravel complex power plays in the blink of an eye. Ametria, Nina exclaimed when she picked up. Heard you're in La. Care to fill me in on what's happening? I sense your stress levels from here. Ametria offered a brief rundown of the day's events, the humiliating confrontation at Teterboro, the suspicious management records, the call from Lawrence Pierce. Nina listened intently, occasionally letting out soft exclamations of disbelief. That's insane, Nina finally said. You need to make an example of them, Ametria. No one should get away with treating you like that. Ametria twisted the diamond-studded watch on her wrist. I'm definitely considering legal action. But first, I want all the facts. Something doesn't add up. Why would there be a record of a plane transfer I never initiated? And why was Captain Harris so bent on keeping me off the jet? It felt personal. Nina hummed thoughtfully. Could be a mistake, could be sabotage. In our world, Ametria, you have to be ready for anything. Promise me you'll be careful. If someone is trying to undermine you, they might go further than simple bureaucratic errors. A chill swept through Ametria. She didn't voice her concern out loud, but Nina had a point. Ametria thanked her friend and ended the call, 1,000 scenarios swirling in her mind. Mallory approached, holding her tablet. Miss White, the private investigator says they can start tomorrow. They'll just need your sign-off. Have them do it, Ametria said decisively. I'm not letting this rest until I know exactly what happened." Mallory nodded, made a quick note, then glanced at the plane's clock. "We should head to the dinner meeting in an hour or so. Do you want to rest or prepare more?" Ametria set the glass of water down. Preparation never stops. Let's review the finance team's key points now. As they delved into spreadsheets and agendas, the bustle of the maintenance crew outside grew distant, like background noise to Ametria's driving focus. Beyond the immediate horizon of deals and meetings loomed a bigger battle, a war Ametria intended to win. She felt the storm gathering, as unstoppable as any force of nature, fueled by righteous anger and the unwavering conviction that no one could diminish her or her accomplishments. Back on the East Coast, things were unraveling for Barbara Klein and Captain Harris faster than they realized. The next morning, Ametria received an urgent call from the private investigator. She and Mallory put the phone on speaker inside the Gulfstream's lounge area before taking off for San Francisco. "I've accessed some interesting files," the investigator began. "There's evidence that Captain Harris made unauthorized updates to the management company's database about 6 months ago. He registered a pending transfer for the aircraft under a fictitious corporate entity. Then he never followed through, leaving it in limbo so it could raise suspicion if you tried to board." Mallory's jaw dropped. "He fabricated ownership transfer records. Why would he do that?" The investigator continued. "Digging deeper, Harris seems to have been floating the idea of purchasing a plane himself, possibly to impress some high-level clients. He was courting on the side. He might have intended to claim partial ownership or create confusion about the aircraft's status, hoping to leverage it for personal gain." Ametria clenched her fists. "So he was using my plane, my property, as a bargaining chip in some twisted scheme?" "Looks like it," confirmed the investigator. "Also, there's chatter about Barbara Klein knowing at least part of what was going on. She may have been complicit or turned a blind eye to keep Harris happy. He's apparently well connected in certain circles, but the details are murky." Mallory exhaled sharply. "Unbelievable." Ametria's voice was cold. "Thank you for the update. Keep digging and let me know if you find more." Once the call ended, Ametria let out a long breath, anger and betrayal pounding through her veins. This wasn't just about prejudice or ignorance, it was a calculated act to exploit her assets. As the jet lifted off for San Francisco, Ametria resolved that neither Captain Harris nor Barbara Klein would walk away unscathed. After landing, Ametria contacted Lawrence Pierce, the management company's CEO, demanding an immediate video conference. Within an hour, Pierce appeared on the screen, looking visibly apprehensive. "Miss White," he began, "I'm aware you've hired an investigator. We've also uncovered some distressing details on our end. I want you to know we're taking swift action. Captain Harris has been suspended, pending termination. Miss Klein is under internal investigation for possible misconduct." Ametria's calm demeanor belied the fury brewing underneath. "You assured me you had protocols. It's clear your protocols failed and your staff tried to manipulate ownership records for personal gain." Pierce's face sagged. "We take full responsibility. I hope you'll give us a chance to rectify this. We value your business deeply." Ametria tilted her head. "I'm considering all options, including legal recourse. But if you truly want to make amends, I expect immediate terminations for anyone involved and a comprehensive audit of your entire management practice. If you fail to meet my demands, I will not only pull my business, I'll make sure every high net worth individual in my network knows exactly what happened. This scandal will become public knowledge." Pierce swallowed. "We understand. Consider it done." Within the week, Ametria received confirmation Captain Harris was officially fired. Barbara Klein was dismissed with cause. Their reputations within the aviation industry took a nosedive. Word spread fast among private jet owners and corporate heads, ensuring that Harris and Klein would face immense difficulties finding reputable positions again. The swirl of rumors and half-truths eventually settled into one clear narrative. Ametria White had been wronged, and she was not the kind of woman to cross. Meanwhile, Ametria coordinated a thorough review of all her dealings with the management company. She requested a new team of professionals handpicked by her staff to oversee her G600, 5650's maintenance and scheduling. Once Ametria was satisfied that every potential weak link had been weeded out, she finalized her decision to remain with the company under a new contract that heavily favored her terms. If Captain Harris had hoped to exploit Ametria's aircraft for personal gain, his plan backfired spectacularly. His pending transfer ploy was exposed for the con that it was. And Barbara Klein, who had gambled on Harris's influence, found herself jobless and discredited. Karma, Ametria mused, always has a way of circling back. Weeks later, Ametria returned to Teterboro Airport under a swirl of winter clouds. This time, she arrived in a sleek black sedan, stepping out in a long coat that billowed in the chilly wind. The management company's new director, a straight-talking woman named Andrea Collins, greeted her on the tarmac. "Miss White," Andrea said warmly, extending a hand. "Welcome back. We've got your G650 fully prepped and ready for your flight. We've also assigned a new captain you personally approved, Captain Tran. He's waiting inside and is very excited to fly with you." Ametria smiled, genuinely this time. "Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate your thoroughness. Let's get started." Inside the hangar, Ametria was struck by how smoothly everything ran. There were no suspicious glances, no condescending remarks, only professional courtesy. Captain Tran introduced himself, a seasoned pilot who radiated respect and competence. The flight crew, likewise, appeared well-briefed and eager to ensure Ametria's comfort and safety. As she boarded her jet, Ametria felt an undercurrent of vindication. The plush interior looked exactly as she'd left it, but her perspective had changed. She was more vigilant, more aware that not everyone who wore a uniform or brandished a badge deserved her trust. Still, she refused to let the cynicism overshadow her satisfaction. She'd won. She'd fired the toxic employees, forced the company to clean house, and reminded everyone that Ametria White was not to be trifled with. In the end, she transformed a day of humiliation into a reaffirmation of her power. Before takeoff, Ametria made a quick call to Nina, updating her friend on the final developments. "They're gone, both Harris and Klein," Ametria said, a note of relief lacing her voice. "Pierce is scrambling to keep the company's reputation intact. Meanwhile, I have a better contract than ever." Nina laughed. "Girl, you handled that like a pro. A lesser person might have let that disrespect slide, but you turned it into a masterclass in accountability." Ametria parted the window shade and watched the ground crew finalize their checks. "I did what needed to be done." "That's right," Nina agreed. "Now go out there and conquer the skies, Ametria White." After the call, Ametria settled into her seat, flipping through the latest figures for her philanthropic foundation. The next stop on her itinerary was a youth empowerment conference in Atlanta, where she would speak to young girls who, like her younger self, dreamed of bigger horizons. The pilot's announcement crackled through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We are cleared for departure." As the Gulfstream taxied onto the runway, Ametria braced for the exhilarating thrust of the engines. Looking out at the horizon, she felt the weight of her accomplishments settle comfortably on her shoulders. No one would ever deny her place again, especially not on the plane she owned. And so, with a roar of power, Ametria soared into the sky, a testament to self-determination, courage, and the unbreakable spirit that refused to be grounded. As Ametria White's Gulfstream G650 ascends toward limitless heights, her story reminds us that no obstacle, be it bureaucratic sabotage or blatant discrimination, can hold back a determined spirit. Every setback became a lesson, every challenge a catalyst, pushing her to stand stronger in her truth. By refusing to accept the unacceptable, Ametria not only claimed her rightful place in the cockpit of success, but also set a precedent for every person who dares to dream bigger than the limitations imposed on them. If this story of unwavering resolve and ultimate triumph resonated with you, don't let it end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Spread Ametria's powerful journey by sharing it on social media, and subscribe to this channel for more inspiring tales of resilience and victory. Together, we can ignite sparks of change that light the path for everyone with a vision worth fighting for.